Hi, I'm Greg Taylor, and I am the author of Killer Pizza, the sequel, Killer Pizza The Slice. I'll put those here. And my standalone book, The Girl Who Became a Beetle. And this is the order that they were published. Killer Pizza, The Girl Who Became a Beetle, Killer Pizza The Slice. I urge you to go out and buy the books. Killer Pizza was great when it got, a quote from R.L. Stine is on the front cover. It's been a number of reviewers have said that Killer Pizza series is great for readers of the Goosebumps series, but have gotten a little, older, too old for that series. And I think that's great. I think that's fine. Because when you're done with it, I know what it's like. I loved the Hardy Boys when I was younger. And when I was done with that series, or I got too old for it, there wasn't anything else out there for me to read, really. And I felt kind of lost, and that's when I sort of became what they now call a reluctant reader. I just didn't read much at all, and I didn't, really want to read the books they were assigning in my English classes. And so, if someone is a huge fan of the Goosebumps series, if they go on to Killer Pizza and they like it, that's great. And it has, Killer Pizza has also been, a number of times been tagged as a good book for reluctant readers. And when I read that, I loved that, because that was very much me when I was younger. So to me, it's sort of like full circle, from a reluctant reader to writing a book that's good for reluctant readers. I don't think there's a coincidence there. Grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it was in 1969, and Night of the Living Dead, which really is the granddaddy of all zombie movies, came out. Now, what made that really special for us, I was a teenager at the time, is that Night of the Living Dead was filmed in Pittsburgh, and so that was huge. We couldn't believe that somebody had actually made a movie in Pittsburgh. It was a low-budget film, and we figured there's no way this is going to be a good movie. And so I remember when my friends and I went to the drive-ins to see it, and we were ready to make fun of it, but it turned out to be a really different kind of horror film, and we had no idea it was going to become the classic that it has. But that had a huge influence on me, both for the types of stories. All those years later, I wrote Killer Pizza, a horror film, but it also made me want to go into film. It's one of those things I wanted that made me think making movies, now this would be really cool. And so that's what I wound up doing. I wound up becoming a screenwriter. So yeah, Night of the Living Dead and its sequels were just had a huge influence on me. I've been writing screenplays for over 25 years. Been writing books. My first book was published 3 years ago, and there are definite differences between the two. One of the things I really love about writing books is a writer does have this special connection with the reader. With screenplays, you're part of a huge team, and your work gets changed and diluted, and it can wind up on the screen looking very different than what you wrote, and as a result, there's not that connection between screenwriter and the person who sits down and watches the film. But writing books, it's just the author and the reader. And in over 25 years of writing scripts, not that I was looking for it, but I never received one fan letter, let's say, from someone who saw one of my films and really liked it. In only 3 years, I've received quite a few letters, emails from young readers who read Killer Pizza series or The Girl Who Became a Beetle. It's just to tell me how much they enjoyed it, and that's been really special, and that's one of the major differences between writing books and scripts. I wrote a script for a Disney animated film. It never was made into a film, but they demanded. They said you had to have a theme before you started to write, and I couldn't do it. I did. I came up with ideas for themes, but I found it to be really impossible to know what the theme of the story is before you even have time to work through it. So I discovered the theme in the course of the writing. The other answer to that question is what kinds of themes do I return to or whatever. It does seem that I keep going back to, certainly in Killer Pizza and The Girl Became a Beetle, it has to do with ultimately believing in yourself, facing your fears, whatever that might be, fear of not being good enough at what you want to do, or feeling inadequate in some way. That seems to be a theme that I return to, and I think that comes from when I was growing up, that I had those feelings, of not ever being quite good enough, and that can really paralyze you. That can plotting out the story. Do I know the entire story before I sit down to write? I do. I have the major arc of the story in my head for sure, and the reason for that. But I always want to have room to maneuver in that basic arc for sure. I don't plot out every single point. But the reason I started doing that is because I had an enormous amount of trouble finishing the stories I started. And that wasn't just when I started to write. That was 5, 6, 7 years into it. I mean, it was getting very frustrating not being able to finish the stories I started. And so once I started employing the 3-act structure, I'm a real disciple for the 3-act structure. That was enormously helpful for me. And plotting out the major points in the story, that's when I was able to start getting through the rough patches. Every writer has rough patches, especially in the second act. That's always the toughest act, I think. I was able to get through those rough patches to the end once I started plotting it out from beginning. All 3 of my books, I had major rewrites. And it wasn't because I didn't know where I was going in the story. It's just that sometimes, in this case for sure, I needed to write it all out to see if it worked or not. And that's sometimes what writing is about. You can't do all the writing in your head. You have to do the hard work of putting it down on paper. And sometimes that first draft isn't up to what you thought it was going to be. And that happened with The Girl Became a Beetle. That was the first book I wrote, second book published. That happened with Killer Pizza, and that happened with the Killer Pizza sequel. All 3 of those, I did major rewrites on them. So I think it continues to be trial and error. I wish I had better advice for new writers out there, that they might not make the same mistakes I made, but I'm still it's still very much trial and error with me, and so there you have it. The book I'm currently working on is the 3rd Killer Pizza book, and this is something new for me. I'm put the prologue on my website, and each month I'm going to put a new chapter from the book on the site up until when it's published in October of 2012. And so it's kind of interesting. I'm still writing it, and so I'll be posting these chapters as I'm writing it, and I've encouraged readers to write and let me know what they think. So who knows? It could be that some of the comments will affect how the story goes. I don't know. I've never done something like this before. So yeah, it's a new adventure. I'm always looking for that in writing, and also I'll be self-publishing this one. So that's a whole new thing as well. But I did want to keep this series going. I love the characters, and I've had a number of readers saying, will there be more adventures for Toby, Annabelle, and Strobe? So I decided, yeah, there are going to be. And that's called Killer Pizza Vampire Steaks. Fun read, and those of you who have read the first 2 Killer Pizza books, there's a 3rd one coming. It's called Killer Pizza Vampire Steaks, coming in October 2012.